I love Pixar movies, and I get so excited whenever a new one comes out. But that made me think about the Pixar movies we'll never get to see, and why they get dumped into the Pixar graveyard. Like, have you ever heard of The Graveyard Book, The Yellow Car, or Newt? There's a reason why you haven't, and there's even more that I haven't mentioned yet. So, to figure all this out, we're digging up Pixar's past, exploring their present movies, and uncovering what we can expect in the future. So I was doing some research about where Pixar came from, and there are some interesting things that I didn't know. To see if I'm alone here, I asked a couple of friends where they think Pixar came from. Hey.
Hey.
Hey, you're right, mate.
So when do you think Pixar was first created? Like what year? What were they making at the time? All that.
I think Toy Story was their first movie, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was late 90s, so I'm going to go early 90s working on Toy Story.
I'm going to say best guess is 1975. I think they were just doing some shorts and stuff, like, I'm assuming they were proof of concepts.
So one was right. While I go through some history, let's give these guys a small project. I'm going to hand them 3 failed Pixar movies, and they're going to have to guess which real Pixar movies it turned into. Make sense? Now, on to the history. While Pixar's first movie was released in 1995, there's a long history of projects before their first famous movie. Pixar has actually been around since 1979 as a part of Lucasfilms. Yes, that Lucasfilms. They had their own division and were even called the Graphics Group. Soon after becoming their own full division, they made the first 100% CGI sequence in any movie, and that movie was Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. With the success of this sequence, they were inspired to continue working on more CGI in movies. This led to the hire of a very important figure in CGI animation, John Lasseter.
And tell us who they are.
Well, this is Woody. He's the main character. He's played by, at least in the English version, by Tom Hanks.
Quick note on John. He helped make basically every Pixar movie from when they first became Pixar, which we're getting to right now. In 1986, Steve Jobs gave the graphics group enough funding to spin off on their own as Pixar in 1986.
And one of the things that I'm proudest of Pixar of is, even though Pixar is the most technologically advanced studio in the world, John has a saying that's really stuck, which is no amount of technology will turn a bad story into a good story.
But that's still 9 years before Toy Story. So what happened? Through a series of investments made by Steve Jobs, Disney Animation, and a few smaller partners, Pixar worked on a bunch of projects. They also went around showcasing the software they developed to other investors. They were trying to sell the idea of 3D animation, and no one was biting. The first feature film using their tech was actually a 2D animated movie by Disney Animation. Disney was trying to speed up the time it takes to animate, and this project turned into The Rescuers Down Under. Before I tell you the rest, let's see how the guys are doing. Hey, how's it going over there?
Well, for starters, I haven't heard of any of these.
Well, I'm gonna let you finish up your guessing and then I'll call you back in a few minutes. While I let them finish up their guesses, let's get to the exciting part. The creation of Toy Story. Disney Animation saw the value in Pixar as a partner and made them a $26 million deal. The first one that they made was an original concept. Toy Story. They used toys because 3D animation was so hard at the time that they figured geometric shaped toys would be easier to animate. This movie was a technological masterpiece. It was the first ever fully 3D animated movie, and it was a huge hit. Because of Toy Story, Pixar became a publicly traded company, opened up their own full studio in California, and began working on more Pixar classics. And with more blockbusters to come, means tons of movie ideas getting thrown into the graveyard. Which reminds me, so what's your first guess?
Looking at the concept art you showed me, I want to say that the yellow car turned into Cars.
Yeah, so I went for the yellow car being Cars.
With so much at stake, the next movie Pixar made had to be a blockbuster. So they got to work and came up with their second movie, A Bug's Life. It was another hit, and now they're 2 for 2. Meanwhile, there was a writer working on an idea for a personified car loosely inspired on the story of the Ugly Duckling. It was about a little electric yellow car living in a gas-guzzling world. It even had some drawings to inspire how the movie would look. John Lasseter saw the potential for this movie, but said it wasn't a strong enough idea at the time. But that idea did stick around. Eventually, the idea for the yellow car turned into Cars. So yeah. The Yellow Car is the first of many Pixar movies that were thrown to the graveyard only to come alive about a decade later. Let's see what other movies may have had the same fate as the Yellow Car. Jumping forward to 2008, there was a movie idea going around. It was an enemies to lovers plot about the last 2 of their kind being forced to be together, even when they can't stand each other to save their species. This movie was called Newt. Now, this plot probably doesn't sound too familiar to any existing Pixar movies, but it was scrapped anyway. That's because it was too visually and story related to a couple of other movies that would have come out at the same time, Rio and Rango. That doesn't mean that we never get a chance to see this new character. We actually still see him in the movie that took over the release date, Brave. You can actually find references to Newt in a few Pixar movies. In Toy Story 3, there's a Newt crossing sign in Andy's room. In The Good Dinosaur, there's a close shot of a prehistoric Newt. And in Brave, you're even able to find a wood-carved version of Newt. Although Brave replaced the release date of Newt, Pixar has made statements saying that Newt's concept was actually replaced with a different Pixar movie. Let's see if the guys know which one that is. Okay, so for the movie Newt, which movie do you think replaced it?
The animation looked newer, which makes me want to go with something like maybe it turned into Luca. And I also want to kind of go with Bug's Life, but with the newer sort of looking concept art and designs, that makes me want to lean Luca.
Newt as Inside Out, because I'm fairly sure I've heard someone say that. It was either that or The Good Dinosaur, because they're the most Newty looking characters that I've seen in Pixar.
The answer is Inside Out. The movies couldn't be further apart from what we know about Newt, but John Lasseter made a statement saying that Inside Out was the replacement after Newt was scrapped, so we can only imagine what the full story would have been. This next movie we're digging up never turned into a movie. It's actually still being pitched by the director to this day, but no studio is taking it on. The fact that Pixar was approached with this idea is kind of weird too, given all of the movies they'd have made by the time they were asked about this project. In 2005, Pixar partnered up with Warner Brothers to take on their first live-action movie based on the book 1906. This book and movie idea are about the fire and earthquake in San Francisco from the year 1906.
Footage of San Francisco following the 1906 earthquake will end up in the Library of Congress. ABC 7 News reporter Katie Udis shows it to you first.
The lost footage was discovered last year at the Alameda Flea Market and in fragile condition.
And I just set up a digital camera that would take a single frame for
The
each.
scale of this project, issues with the script, and a budget of over $200 million ultimately got it scrapped. Brad Bird, the director, is quoted saying, "The problem has always been scaling it and containing it in a movie-sized length. It's really a movie that wants to be a miniseries." And since that quote, he's been working on rewriting and pitching. Good luck getting your movie made, Brad. While the budget was huge and there were script issues, I personally think Pixar didn't want to work on a live-action movie, or really any movie that wasn't fully CGI. My reason for that guess is because of another failed project that I'll get into in just a second. First, let's check in one last time. Are you having trouble with that last one? So I kind of lied when I gave you these movies. One of them isn't a movie.
It said animation studio, which makes me want to think that it was like a side project within Pixar, but if I have to pick a movie, I would want to go with The Incredibles. My reasoning for that would be that Circle 7 sounds like some sort of agency or like a team, and that's the only one that kind of comes to mind as like being a superhero team or like a superhero agency or something like that.
It's a failed studio division of Pixar, Circle 7 Animation. They were supposed to make all the sequels to Pixar movies, but since Disney bought Pixar, they retired that division and moved the animators to Walt Disney Animation to work on different projects. The movies they would have made were Monsters Inc. 2, Lost in Scaradise, Finding Nemo 2, and a very different version of Toy Story 3. Now, back to this last dead Pixar movie. In 2010, a man named Henry Selick came into the picture. Now, if you know who this guy is, you can probably already guess why I believe this movie was tossed out. Henry was brought on for a movie called Shadowmaker that was set to release in 2013. It was going to be a stop-motion movie with CGI elements that Pixar would handle. This partnership ended abruptly, though. Quick backstory on Henry Selick. He's best known for making classic stop-motion movies that you've probably already seen. Here are a few that he's known for: The Nightmare Before Christmas, James and the Giant Peach, Monkey Bone, and Coraline. With these movies under his belt, you can tell that he has a very particular style of stop motion and storytelling. In Selick's words, though, the movie was tossed to the Pixar graveyard because of interference from John Lasseter, who came in and constantly changed elements of the script and production that ended up raising the budget that would lead to its cancellation. Again, I think Pixar backed out of these two non-CGI movies because they wanted to keep pushing the boundaries on what a 100% CGI movie could do. So that's all the Pixar graveyard movies that we have. But what does that mean for the future? Well, there are two movies that are set to come out. We have Elio and Inside Out 2. I think both of these movies are going to keep pushing the boundaries of what CGI is capable of in 3D animation. And I'm pretty sure that Pixar is going to stick to their guns and not work on anything that's stop motion, live action, or anything that's not 3D, 100% CGI animated movies. So when I mentioned that the yellow car wasn't a strong enough idea earlier, it's because Pixar needed to ride the wave of their hit Toy Story. That's because marketing plays such a huge role in how movies are perceived by audiences, and that can make or break a movie, even if it sucks. So check out this video where I go over how good marketing can make bad movies blockbusters, where I'll explain how you're being played by movie studios.